Now,
we need to get caught up. We need to
I'd
know
like
what's
to
going on.
catch the audience up on your big news.
On my
Hail
big
to the
news.
chief. Hail to the
Oh,
chief.
oh, nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, sure they do, dude.
Oh, we all want to hear that.
Oh Lord, yeah. So, all right. So I was successful in my long, arduous campaign to become the oh Lord, Roger's shirt. Birds aren't real. Roger's been black pilled. He's been straight black pilled. So I was victorious in my long, arduous campaign to become the president of my homeowners association. So I will go down. My legacy will be the very first HOA president of our neighborhood, newly formed, and yeah. So that's my big news. We still haven't scheduled a date for my coronation. So the wife's working on that. Um,
Oh, I'm sure
I
she
already
is.
I'm drafting up my first couple of proclamations to disseminate out to the peasants. But I've already got my first my first message on on Facebook Messenger asking if I can tell one of the residents to get their car off the grass, that they parked it in their yard, their own personal yard, but the neighbor doesn't like cars being parked on the grass. So they messaged me and was like, "Can you make them get it off the grass?" And I just messaged back and said, "No." And it was like, "Well,
That
why?"
is
I
a
was
little
like,
tacky, though. That is
Hey,
tacky.
hey, you know what? Hey, I get it, but at the end of the day, it's not my grass. I don't care. Like I legit don't care. And so I messaged back. I said no, and they were like, "Well, why?" I said, "One, there's no rule against it in the neighborhood, right? So you go look at there's no rule against it. And two, I don't care because it's not my grass. Look it up." And it's not somebody who parks. And here's the thing, like I walk my neighborhood a lot, with the dog and stuff. Like, it's not something that something that they always do. Like, this is just they
Sure.
had a bunch of people over or something, and they parked, somebody parked in the grass. Like, is it your grass? No, then leave it alone. First off, but the other big part was, did you talk to him? No. Okay, then why are you asking me? Like, go next door and have that conversation with your neighbor if it's bothering you that much. Personally, it's not your grass. You should probably leave it alone. But before you contact me, like, just go to your neighbor and be like, "Hey, are they going to be parked there long?" Whatever. But
Well, especially if it's temporary. But it's like you said, it's they don't want to be the bad guy. So HOAs have become, hey, I don't want to tell my neighbor that I think it's tacky or you shouldn't do this. So I'm just going to email the HOA and have the president do it because I'm too much of a wuss to do it myself.
Yeah, and so I've started off on the right foot, at least with that person. I've managed expectations. Don't contact me with some BS.
So how much have property values fallen since you've taken over?
Probably about 37%. No,
Just getting ahead of the curve. That's all.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny because, dude, we haven't had a meeting. We haven't had anything. Like, it was like, all right, here's our elected officers, and then, like, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything. It was like,
good.
Yeah,
good.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, good.
And I'm not going to, because the whole point was, it's like, I want to keep the HOA out of your day to day life. There is zero reason,
and mine too,
that it should be involved. And mine too. Yeah, exactly. There's zero reason. But let's pay the bills when they come in, once a month for the, for the street lights, and for the lawn care company to, pretty up the entrance, both entrances to the neighborhood and the common areas. Other than that, there's zero reason the HOA should be involved in anything. No whatsoever. So.
Roger, are you hanging in there, buddy? You going to make it?
It's kind of funny because I've had this, procedure scheduled for at least a couple months now. And you know how it is with this stuff. You're just, yeah, just put it on the counter. I'm good to go. And the hardest part of this thing, man, is like, I mean, think about it. When was well, maybe you have, but when was the last time I've gone 35 hours without food? Like, I couldn't tell you the last time I have. I don't know if I've ever gone 35 hours without food. That's the struggle, So it's like, and I don't think I planned this thing right. So for the listeners out there, and some of those, it might be too much information, so just mute it or whatever. You're not listening anyway. But the I didn't plan this thing right because I was like, you know what? I'll do it at like 10:30 in the morning. That way I can, I'll do my fasting because you got to fast a day prior, right?
Has
Yep.
everybody caught on that Roger's having something done with the colonoscopy? Because you haven't actually said it.
Oh, well, I just did. And if they've seen our videos, surely they
I
deduce
hope.
that from it, right?
I hope.
We got some cute little shorts out there. But so anyway, it's like, well, you got to fast 24 hours, but it ends up being more than 24 hours because I'm not going to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and eat. I ate 11 o'clock. I threw down a burger down my gullet without bread, went to sleep, and then, woke up this morning and then get another 24 hours or whatever. What I'm worried about is, so I just started taking the medicine at 2 o'clock because, you got to cleanse yourself. And then I start taking my next one at 6. I'm going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, dude, and like have to go take care of business.
No. So I had mine done recently, right? And once you take the liquid, the big jug, that
Yeah.
I hope you got that thing in your fridge, and I hope that thing is as cold as it can get without freezing, because that's the only way you're going to get it down. Because it tastes it's not. I've drank worse, but it's not that tasty, right? But it being really, really, really cold makes it a whole lot easier.
It is in the fridge because I am going to have to drink it during this episode. So
yeah, it's going to be.
So
awesome.
I'll tell you. So for me, I drank mine, and it was probably about 40 minutes after I drank it, 30 to 40 minutes after I drank it. It was go time, and that lasted probably for about 2 hours. Yeah, it lasted for about 2 hours because I had mine done in the morning time too, and I went to bed and I was, dude, there was nothing left when I went to bed, right? So I didn't have to get up at 3 in the morning, to run to the bathroom. Like there,
but you had to drink. There. You had to do round 2 in the morning, right?
You had to do round 2 in the morning, yeah, and that comes out pretty quick at that point because there's nothing there.
It's just straight liquid, dude. It's like a water hose. It just comes in.
It's like traveling through a water hose. And then, dude, that's the worst part of it though, because when you go in, they in process you, and they're like, okay, you put on your little nightgown, your little, hospital nightgown, and you lay on your left side, and they wheel you into the room, and the doc's like, all right, verify your name, date of birth. You verify that. And then the nurse comes over, and the nurse is like, night. And dude, some of the best sleep I've gotten in a long time. It was.
So how long does the whole thing take? Like an hour, give or take?
Yeah, if that. Yeah. And then they wake you up. They wheel you back into a waiting room. They wake you up, and then they tell you to. For me, they woke me up. And they're like, all right, 10 minutes. You can grab your stuff and get out of here. And so they sit me out the door, and so my wife's there, to drive me home because you can't drive.
Right.
And I had to walk like 200 meters down to where she was parked. I fell in the bushes because, dude, you're still like the anesthesia still kicked it. Like it's full. I mean, it's, you're still high, like Hunter Biden high. And, but the prep is 100% the worst part. But on a serious note, I will tell everybody, go get it done. It sucks, but go get it done. I was glad I got mine done because, the doc, they had to remove a couple things. And he was like, hey, see these right here? And dude, you'll get pictures. They'll video the whole thing. Like you'll get still pictures, from inside. And he'll be like, see this right here, this right here? Yeah, we had to remove those. And, from mine, he was like, they removed 3 little polyps. And he was like, when we see this kind right here, because they test them, he was like, 9 times out of 10, those turn into an issue. So I would recommend go get it done. It sucks, but it's important.
Well, I'm trying to overplay it a little bit because, I mean, don't get me wrong, not eating sucks. I mean, you see all of us. I mean, clearly not eating sucks, but my wife's having hers done as well, like in a month. So she's kind of like, well, I'm watching you go through this thing and see, so, I shoved the burger down my gullet last night at like, 10:59. I'm laying in bed and I'm like, oh, I got hunger cramps. I got hunger pains. I'm so hungry.
Oh, bro. Yeah. You gotta ham it up, dude.
Yeah. So she's actually getting scoped both ways because she's got some throat stuff that she's got to get taken a look at. But they're going to they'll put her out and do the throat and the colonoscopy, so she'll get everything knocked out with one shot, which is nice because I don't know what you call it. I had like a mini colonoscopy. They didn't go all the way to the colon. They just kind of went up the intestine a little bit. I had that done at Fort Meade, dude. They did not put me under for that.
What?
Yep, they did not put me in. I had it done at Kimbrough, so I come in there, right, and I don't really know what's going on.
Oh,
They're like, because I had some
Jesus.
other issues I was looking at, and they're like, you might have some hemorrhoids up there or something like that, and whatever. So they're like, okay, lay down, and I lay down, and this nurse comes in, and she's like, hey, nice to meet you, this and that. I'm like, oh, okay, nice to meet you too. What are you doing in this process? And she's like, I'm your hand holder. I'm like, what does that mean? Because I'm thinking I'm getting knocked out. She's like, this is going to be severely uncomfortable, and I'm here to hold your hand so you can squeeze as hard as you need to squeeze when it gets painful. And again, I was naive to it all. I had no clue. I mean, you can probably figure it out if you actually give some thought process to it. But they basically shove a tube up there, blow air in to expand it, and then like inch the camera in there. Yeah, dude, that was like 45 minutes of my life. That was probably one of the most painful things I've ever been through.
I can't believe they didn't put
But
you
when
up
I
for
got
that.
done, they gave me a Sprite. They gave me a can of Sprite, so it was all good.
I hate the military.
And I'm having this one done at the VA, so I'm sure my mix tastes
Oh,
extra
Jesus.
good. I'm sure it probably tastes a lot better than the one you had.
Oh, the worst. Luke, when you getting yours done? You're muted.
I was thinking really hard about what I was going to say.
Welcome to the show.
I've got to get all that
I
stuff
remember my
done.
first time.
Yeah, you just described it in detail. No, I got to get all that stuff done, man. And I think right now is a good time to start because I'm doing the whole VA disability claim finally after this many years. So I'll probably just go through, the process of about, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, just getting everything done, which I'm the kind of guy I've had that. I'm not like Roger. I'm the kind like, if I go to the doctor, he'll tell me something's wrong and I feel great. I don't want to go to the doctor and find out I have stage 4 cancer, because that goes through my mind, well, if I go to the doctor,
Sure.
they're going to
Yeah.
find something. But on the other hand, I am pretty healthy. I very rarely, knock wood, I very rarely am sick enough to go to an emergency room or a doctor, but that's the time you need to get it done. Right. 50 years old, you got to get this stuff done. You can't think like that. Like we said, we work out to stay in shape, not necessarily to look good. And it's getting more and more like not necessarily stay in shape, but you work out now and take care of your body now and eat well now so that you can, live a quality life when you're in your 70s. That starts now. That starts 20 years beforehand. So yeah, it's learning a lot about that disability process. Very interesting. Very interesting. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and I think I'm doing it the right way. So it's pretty cool.
I did mine the wrong way, and I'm going to do it the wrong way again until I pay somebody to do it the right way for me.
Well,
Oh, Lord.
yeah, this this VA insider I'm going through is it's pretty good so far. They seem to know what they're talking about. What they're saying makes a lot of sense. They seem very confident. So, we'll see. And one of the things, I shared this with you guys. I've shared this with you guys often. We've talked about it often. But when I first talked to this VA claims insider coach, he's like, so what do you think about? He's just getting my opinion on things and where I stand. And I was like, look, man, here's the thing. I don't feel like I deserve it. There's guys that are triple amputees who get 100%, and, so I went down that road. I don't feel like I'm disabled. And he said, that's the number 2 reason people say they'd never filed. The number 1 reason is I just didn't know. The other one is I knew, but I feel like I don't deserve it. I don't feel like anything's wrong. So he broke it down for me. He said, look, man, you can't think about it like that because according to the law mandates you have to look at every case individually. You cannot compare cases. That's not how VA disability works. Every case stands on its own merits with a nexus to service that affects your everyday life. And anybody who's been in, situations like we have. It's not just military, it's unfortunate, but police officers, firefighters, first responders, they all have issues as well, but they don't have as good a disability as the DoD has. But anybody who's been in these situations is gonna have stuff that affects them on a day-to-day basis. Is it missing a limb? No, not necessarily, but it might affect your work. It might affect where you live. It might affect a lot of different things. So he broke it down. It made a lot of sense. I feel really good about it now, actually. I probably should have, but
welcome to
it's
the
like,
club.
but it's like this, you guys, I treat you guys a lot like my daughter treats me, right? It's like she'll come and ask me for advice or a question. I'll tell her the right answer, and she'll go, "Nah, that's BS." She'll go ask somebody else standing right next to me the same thing. They will say the exact same words. Just, I think you're right about that. So I mean, you guys have kind of said the same words, but I wasn't listening. But this other guy, I'm listening to him now, so we'll see. It's very interesting how the VA claim works. How all that stuff works. I would have figured like knee problems, shoulder problems, back problems. I would have figured go after that first. That guy's like, hell no, you go after that dead last, because those are the ones most often give you the lowest percentage or just denied altogether. And I was like, no joke. He's like, yeah, first you go after psych. That is number one. Number two is your breathing, anything to do with, your airway,
your pulmonary.
And then you're going after headaches, you're going after tinnitus, and then what else? On sleep apnea, which kind of has the airway. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Wish I could get that 100%, but that ain't gonna happen. That 100% would be nice.
You never know.
Dude, 100%. You don't have to pay property tax in Texas. That is insane.
It adds up. It adds up pretty quick, even with the the wonky VA math and how they do it. Because I mean, once you get past that stuff, it's at that point when you start talking those joints, it's pain, right? And that law got passed in I think like 0406 sometime. And it's like your range of motion and your pain in your joints. I mean that's and they count joint like literally by definition a joint. So all of your fingers, joints, all your your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, knees, ankles, hips, and stuff.
Well, I'll let you in on how this company does it, Roger. And you guys are already pretty much squared away. But I didn't know any of this, so maybe some people listening do know it. But this is like a pretty big company I'm working through. They have quite a few clients, and they have their own system where they have it's not their own clinics, but they're clinics that they underwrite. And these particular clinics service only veterans. And a lot of the doctors, a lot of the board certified psychiatrists and psychologists are veterans. So they know what to look for. They know the right way to say it. And, basically they're prepping you, and it's all very honest. They're not telling you to lie. They're straight up not telling you to lie. They're just saying, hey, the system is there. Use it. You study for your exams. Yeah, those clinics are going to bankrupt the government. Well, maybe. But I guarantee you when they send, because insurance, the guy's like, look, you can go through your own insurance. You go try to do all this stuff, but this is a faster way to do it, number one. And number two, these are specialists. So I guarantee that place is giving them kickbacks or the other way around. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a business. And yeah, but I can't remember what I was about to say. They're not telling you to lie or anything, but just like you be prepared. You go in there, you have everything lined out. You studied for it. You can even bring notes with you, but you're prepping for the final determination. That final interview you get with usually a contractor for the VA to go through and look for the nexus to service. Number one. Number two, is it affecting your everyday life? And well, that's pretty much it, really. Nexus to service, and does it affect your everyday life?
That's the one that pisses me off. The connection to service, because it's like I had a couple things get denied, and they're like, we don't see the service connection there, and I'm like, the Army's the only thing I've ever done. Like, how is it not connected to service? It's like it's the only adult real job that I had other than working at like KFC for 4 hours of my life. That's what pisses me off is stuff like that. Like I could see if like you joined when you were 30, you did 4 or 5 years, you got out. Okay, you had a lot of life, your prime years behind you or whatever. I'm like, dude, I joined the Army when I was 18 years old. I mean, like, what the heck? Isn't everything service connected?
and Josh, that's right. Well, on the going along with that, Roger, there was a dude at DLI prior service E5 with me, and he hurt himself, like messed himself up bad playing softball. He was sliding to a base and just landed wrong. Totally ripped his shoulder apart. Kind of messed up his hip too. And this dude, and it was intramurals, and this dude got 100% disability in the year 2000. It's crazy. But Josh, I was going to ask you, were you in that conversation with a couple of our listeners, Jer and Chris? I think they listened. Where they were talking about the psych evals. Were you there for that one, or was that Ted?
No, I wasn't there for that one.
They were saying there's one guy. I don't know this guy. He came along after me, but I think you guys do. I can't remember his name. I'd say it. He said he's been trying to get a psych eval for like months now, because he goes in to talk to these people, these psychologists, and they're like, okay, just stop talking. I can't help you. You're going to have to talk to somebody else, because his stories are so messed up. When he starts telling what he's seen and everything, he's on his third clinician trying to get through the psych eval because it's just too much for him.
That's crazy. You know what though? But I mean, I mean, that's totally plausible. You know, because you think about some of the things that we've seen and some of the things that we've done. Like, the one that I told this at a family event, years ago, and like everybody, like, I mean, it went dead quiet, and everybody stopped and looked at me, and everybody was like, don't ever bring that up again, because we all have a dark sense of humor, right? I mean, we laugh and joke about some dark things, and I think, by and large, I think most people, military and the vets, like, because we have that dark sense of humor, because that's what gets you through. Because if not, you would go insane. Well, so when we were in Balad with task force, it was, you had that poor airman who had to sit there and take all the SSE in, right, and triage all the all the chem, the captured enemy material, from SSE stuff, and we had one refrigerator in our little team house, and and this was in, I forget what year this was, man. This was back in like maybe 08. But it was like, okay, hey, we're gonna start wrapping things up in Iraq, like kill as many as you can as fast as you can. And the fellows were coming back. They're like, hey man, we need to SSE to make sure, we need to put these people, we need to capture their biometrics. Well, we can't bring the people back with them because, they don't, we turned their head into a canoe. So we just chopped off their fingers. And so I go to get my leftover, chicken nuggets one night, because I'm getting ready to go to, the bum brief and stuff like that. And I have to go into the refrigerator, and I have to move this bag of fingers and a couple of hands to get to my chicken nuggets. And I was just like, can we get a separate refrigerator for the body parts? And I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, how funny. Oh, this reminds me of, the bag of fingers. And everybody like looks at me, and everybody's like,
you got your chicken nuggets though, didn't you?
Hey,
I did. They're like, is Uncle Josh going to be okay? Is he okay?
What's the statute of limitations on this stuff? Like, if you talk about that, right, and say so, it's like,
no idea.
If somebody came and listened to it, it's like, well, that's a war crime. I mean, because I was about to tell a story that rivals that, not to one up you, but I'm like, I wonder if I should tell this or not, because it wasn't anything I did. It's something I saw, kind of like that. Yeah. I didn't cut anybody's fingers or head off, but I did see the aftermath. And dude, I swear to God, just if you don't know what I'm talking about right now, rewind and listen to it. What I just said about 10 seconds ago. When I showed up, it was my first night in 2007. I come out and I see somebody hosing off a certain body part, an interpreter. And I was like, what? It was such a shock. I'd seen a lot of shit, but I'd never seen that. And he's just hosed it off like nothing's happening, because somebody thought that would be a good idea for SSE. And I had that Apocalypse Now moment. I was like, no, that wasn't 2007. That was 2008. I was like, okay, something has radically changed in the 5 months since I've been gone. This is on another level, dude. What the hell?
Yeah. And that it absolutely, absolutely was. I mean, when it was in Mosul, I think it might have been '05 or beginning of '06, and we showed up, shortly after a suicide, an SV bed hit a Humvee of some whatever the MP unit was in Mosul, and so there wasn't anybody to talk to, as far as like that we needed to talk to, as potential, sources and stuff. It was just, a bunch of, coalition forces out there interviewing witnesses and, this, that, and the other. And they're like, hey, we need to police everything up. And so you're like Halloween, it's like, when you're a kid, you get those like the real good rubber mask. I'm talking about the realistic ones and stuff. Like, so I go to pick something up and I'm like, reach down and grab it. And I'm wearing my, obviously I'm wearing my gloves, but I reach down to grab it and I pick it up. And it was like this dude's face, like the suicide bomber's face.
Oh,
And I just like pick it up and it's all gooey and, jiggly and stuff. And it still got like half the hair on it. And I was just like, but I'm holding it in my hand. And I was like, does anybody have a bag? And I had to walk like 100 meters back to the striker with this dude's face, in my hand. And then one of the infantry guys grabs it and he puts it on his face. And he's like, oh,
I
and
was
he
gonna
runs around
ask.
for like a minute. Yeah, dude, of course. Like he like pulls it over as, as much as he can. And he's like, oh, look at me. I'm a suicide bomber and everything. And I was just like, everybody died laughing because it was the funniest thing. And then, I was thinking about that later and I was just like, what in the hell happened? Like, what just happened? Like, what are we doing? Like and that's why Apocalypse Now, that's why I still say Apocalypse Now is the closest war movie to the truth on that, because it's just, it's a descent, as you're going upriver, it's a descent into just craziness, just lunacy. I mean, just,
straight native.
the
Straight
human
native.
psyche. Yeah, dude, the human psyche is just, just losing touch with all reality.
See, but there's a well, for me at least, there's a draw to that, right? There's a real draw to it
Oh,
because
100%.
the crazier, not necessarily putting another face on my own and saying, "Hello, Clarice," or something like that. I didn't do that, but I learned that I liked it because I went on a deployment to Kandahar in, what year was that? 2013, 2011, 12, whatever it was. And it was a straight garrison deployment. That's the one where the MP gave me the ticket for not having a
Oh,
reflector belt
yeah.
on. And I was absolutely miserable. I would have given anything to be out on a fob and just experiencing just the madness, just the crazy madness. And it was just, so I do miss it, but it is crazy. You don't necessarily love it when you're in the moment, but I don't know, man. Roger, I know he's been seeing some pictures of him downrange, looking pretty rough.
Yeah, I think a lot. Well, one, it's like practicing and never getting to play the game, right? I mean, that's when we get down there. And don't get me wrong, there's downsides to it. You miss your family and your loved ones, and there's creature comforts that you miss back home. But hey, this is what you train for, and you feel bad for the folks. You talk about Garrison Army, you feel bad for the folks almost, before 9/11, because there were very few deployments. And it's like, hey, if you're a tank driver, or if you're an infantryman or something like that, it's like, hey, man, you're not driving a whole lot of tanks around, downtown Detroit, right? Maybe they should. But it's like for us, it's the one time where, hey, man, you actually get out there and do everything that you've trained for, and and for some of us, been around for a while, that we trained for years. The other side is, I think you have to be, and this might be what separates folks. I think for me, like, none of it ever bothered me. The blood, guts, the gore never bothered me because, and maybe I'm black pill, but it's I'm a true believer. I'm a believer in the cause. I believe why we were there. I believe in the mission that we were carrying out. And hey, man, everything else, man, is just it's just a side effect of the mission that we were carrying out. Because at the end of the day, it's you or the soldiers that are next to you, their lives at risk. So with what we were doing, it's like, hey, man, don't die for your country, make the other poor bastard die for his. Wasn't it Patton that said that or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
for a lot of that stuff, I never really struggled with a lot of it. And I know folks do, so I'm not downplaying it or whatever. I know there's folks out there with some severe PTSD and nightmares and this and that. You know what? It just, to me, man, we had an objective, and we did what we had to do to accomplish it. And what happens. And I'm just glad it's not me or the man woman that's next to me. It's the bad guy.
And maybe this is a decent segue and push it to Josh, but I was talking to Jared and Chris about it last week, and it saw some pretty heinous stuff, right? Like the suicide bomber's face, and like some stuff I would love to talk. I'd like to talk about. I'm not going to belabor it, but just stuff that was really messed up, and a little bit like Roger on that. It's like when I saw something happen to the enemy, I didn't bother me. It really didn't. It was a little bit shocking. Like the first time I saw somebody completely shredded, that it's shocking. Well, never seen that before. That's not like the movies. But it doesn't stay with me to this day. What did stay with me, and it still does. And since I told talking to Jared and Chris, and I told them this one story, and since I told that story, I've thought about it every single day. Is when I'd see little kids get hurt or killed. Um, that's tough, because they're kids. They're just a victim of circumstance, and they're just there. So seeing the innocents get killed, even as sucky as it is, well, I don't want to go on to get in too deep in this stuff, but I saw a 14-year-old wife of a piece of shit terrorist over there in Iraq that we rolled up on the objective, and she and her mom were the only ones that were there, and he was her child bride, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting, and it's like, my heart is not so callous that I'm like, well, screw her as a 14-year-old girl that married a terrorist. It's like, come on, like how ridiculous can you be to have that kind of mindset? Which, we do have a Western mindset though, so maybe it's flawed, but it's always the innocence that got me. The innocents that were getting killed or maimed or hurt or they're whatever on the battlefield, that sticks with me more so than any combat or, seeing your brothers, go down. That's tough. That's obviously, you don't even have to cover that. That's a rough one, but it's always, the kids, right? I mean, Josh, I'm sure you saw some of that over, when you were down, not even some, probably a lot, but there's another situation going on in the world right now where quite a few innocents are going to be hurting.
Yeah, it was definitely definitely the kids, because I mean at the end of the day, I mean they're like you said, they're kids, and by and large kids are innocent, and they don't they have to deal with the choices that are made by the adults around them. And it was always tough seeing kids. Other thing was tough seeing just innocent people in general. One, you talk about the story, yeah, when I the fingers thing, and in the refrigerator and stuff like that, that, yes, it's funny in a way, but it's not something I think about every day. And I wrote about this in our book. One of the ones that I think about every day was, long and short of it, not to revisit it all again, but we hit the wrong app. Yep, snafus, food bars, tarfus, and other sordid tales. Um, is long and short of it, we hit the wrong house, and young ranger shotgun the door, to make entry, and there was an old lady standing on on the other side of the door, and you know she caught it, and it killed her. Wrong house, just and so, but like this old lady, I mean, she was old, like she was, she could have been any one of our grandmothers. She was elderly, and hearing her daughters wailing for like the 30-45 minutes that we were there, just wailing, and then and then 45 minutes later we're like, all right, well, we got the wrong house, we got to go to another one. But like I can hear that, like every day I hear that. Yeah, and that's when you think about it, you're like that lady she should still be alive. She should not have died that night. It was it was U.S. forces mistake, and it just shouldn't have happened. But hearing that scream, like I hear that every day, and probably will now until. But what's going on now? Yeah, there's going to be more innocent, and more innocent people have already died, and there's going to be more to come. Um, and everybody, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 48, 72 hours, everybody knows what we're referring to in Israel, and specifically Gaza and Hamas. I mean, they're still getting a body count from the incursion into Israel from Gaza. They are still working on a body count, and I mean, I caught snippets of the president's speech today. And people are online; they're questioning, whether the reports about the 40 babies that have been decapitated is true. He came out and said that he's seen the pictures. All right, so you know when you start talking about a level of barbarism, you're decapitating infants, like that's truly beyond the pale. We've crossed a completely different Rubicon at that point. Some people have said that Hamas is worse than ISIS. I don't think they are. I think I think all fundamental terrorist groups, especially Islamic fundamental terrorist groups, are all this generally the same as far as their level of barbarism. ISIS pulled out. I mean, they did some pretty heinous stuff as well. They weren't shy about killing babies or kids either. So I don't think Hamas is worse than ISIS, or ISIS is worse than Hamas. But I don't know. I'll kick over to Roger. He can kind of talk about what he wants to talk about it. Netanyahu came out today, and I think we're in for the long haul on this, because Netanyahu came out today and said every Hamas affiliated individual will die. So I mean, this is you go back and you take a look at what Israel did after the Munich massacre. It took them a while, but they hunted down every single one of them. And so this is not something that's going to be over very soon. And supposedly there's going to be, the ground invasion is still getting ready to go in, which, I mean, that's going to be brutal in itself when you look at how big Gaza is and how densely populated it is. You sending ground forces in there, I mean, that's going to be a meat grinder. So
I want to talk so bad, but go ahead, Roger. You go ahead.
No, I'll ask you a question. You can take it from there. So, obviously Gaza, what's happening with the West Bank? I mean, is there a lot of activity out there as well, or is it primarily just Gaza?
Well, this morning, I think we were exchanging some texts. It looked like that. This is so complicated because it's not complicated. It's just involved, right? So you've got the north of Israel, there's borders with Lebanon, and that's Hezbollah territory. You got the south, which is Gaza. It's a strip of land about 26 miles long, not very wide. I don't know how wide it is. And
like
those
10
are
kilometers wide.
Yeah, it's a very narrow stretch of land. That's where a lot of Palestinians have chosen to live. They've chosen to self-govern since 2005. Since 2005, they're self-governing. It's like an autonomous region within Israel, so to speak. Israel provides them electricity. They provide them certain critical infrastructures in that area, whatever. But that's where all these Palestinians live. Jews are not allowed in those areas. Certain Palestinians are allowed in Israeli areas, but we're getting beside the point. That's not your question. Your question was what's going on in the rest of Israel. Well, this morning we thought that Hezbollah might have started to get their jihad on, which would have been a really bad call for them. And I think it's very transparent. Iran is holding Hezbollah back. Because if Iran really wanted to, if they thought this was their moment, Hezbollah would be coming in from the north, from Lebanon. And Josh may disagree with me on some of this stuff. I don't know. This is just my read on it and what I'm looking at. I don't think you will disagree. But this morning there were some reports that UAVs were coming in, suicide UAVs from the north, and we're like, oh, it's on now. You're talking, it's on. But apparently those reports, I mean, Israel itself came out and said, no, that's not happening. So, I will give Joe Biden this. I don't give Joe Biden much. I think his speech was yesterday. He waited 72 hours to do it. He made another speech today, but yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think it was a bad speech. I really don't. He said the right thing when he was talking about, we're moving assets into the region. These are strategic assets, aircraft carrier. Basically, that's telling Iran and their proxy Hezbollah, if you think you're going to move, this is not going to go how you think it's going to go. That's the threat. But he also didn't say Iran by name. I don't think, and a lot of right wingers jumped on that. I was like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at this point. You're not openly taunting. Now, today, he did tell Iran, be careful or something like that. But yesterday, I mean, I don't think it was a bad speech. So to answer your question, like West Bank, up further north, Lebanon, oof, man, we better watch that real close because that could escalate. There's a lot to talk about with Israel, and I want to kick it back to you, Roger. But one thing to realize is Netanyahu saying that. Now, Josh, did he say all of Hamas or Hamas that had anything to do with this?
No, all of Hamas.
Okay, so that's very that's something. What a lot of people don't realize as Americans is the Palestinian state within Israel. Maybe we can go into like a Reader's Digest version of history here in a moment. But the Palestinian state is kind of governed. I'm sitting here watching in the corner. I'm sitting here watching footage of what's been going on. It's just very disturbing. But the Palestinian state is kind of governed by three competing bodies, which is the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad. Okay, those are the three political parties. So imagine in the U.S. you've got Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians. Okay, I think that Islamic Jihad would be like the Libertarians. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit more out there. Palestinian Authority and Hamas. Hamas is currently in control of the political system. That's like the Republicans and Democrats. So imagine someone saying, you know what, the Republicans are responsible for this, and we're just going to go ahead and kill all the Republicans. It's like that. I mean, you're talking about wiping out an actual political party. That's how serious it is. And we don't understand that with our Western mindset. It is a different world over there. And we can get into a little bit of and I realize we're insulting, we might be insulting a lot of our listeners, but maybe half, but the other half haven't heard this stuff before. So, I do think it does bear, teasing out a little bit. So, Roger, I don't have a pithy question to ask you or anything, but like I will broad, open-ended. When you first started seeing the footage, right? And not just first, but maybe the first 6 hours. How'd you feel? What were your thoughts?
It's cyclic, right? We've seen this story before. And, so historically, here's what happens. Hamas comes over, they kill, 10, 15, Israelis or Jewish people or whatever. And then the Israelis get pissed off. They kill about 500 of them. And then, of course, all this outrage, international outrage, the U.S. has to step in. We say ceasefire. That happens for another 6 months. And then it just kind of happens, goes over and over and over again. What I think was different with this one, and this is where I think there was a miscalculation, and this is why Iran and Hezbollah are kind of, taking a step back, is there are Americans involved. Last I heard was 14 dead. And do we even know how many hostages are possibly Americans yet?
We don't know how many hostages, but it's been confirmed now there's 22 dead Americans as of
Good Lord.
6 hours ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so that number increased today, because I think this morning I thought it was like 14. So 22.
Yeah.
That changes the landscape a lot. Like, it's because here's the thing, and I said this the other day, I think in one of our tweets or whatever. You can argue whether we, won the battle or war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the things that we're doing in Africa or whatever. But here's the reality of it. We killed a lot of people. We killed a lot of people over 2 decades. You can argue the other stuff, but a lot of bad guys and a lot of folks died in general. We were very, very good at killing people. So I think, when you look at, the 20 plus Americans that are dead now, however many are held hostage. I mean, God knows how many. I mean, it could be, in the dozens and maybe up to 50 or 100. That's just, it's a route that you don't really want to go. I think if you're, Hezbollah or, even Iran, right? I think I don't know what you think, Josh, but I think that ramps it up to a different level. And I think that because of the American deaths, well, 2 things. One, I kind of expected some more out of the administration regarding that. It's one thing if they want to go at themselves over there and it is what it is. Once you start killing Americans, okay, now you expect the president to kind of, be a little bit more assertive, right? So I don't know. Do you think that the death of Americans and the potential hostages, well, one, what do you think will happen to the hostages? And 2, do you think that had anything to do with, Iran maybe holding back Hezbollah from taking any further actions?
So I don't know that the hostages changed the math problem for them. I mean, Hamas, what are they going to do with the hostages? At a certain point, I don't think we get them back. At a certain point, I think they're going to kill them if they don't get killed in the airstrikes, that Israel's doing on the Gaza Strip right now, because Hamas and a lot of your Islamic terror groups have historically used civilians as human shield. They put civilians in places that they knew were going to get struck. Like Luke pointed out before, and then it's like, oh well, you did that, you bombed this apartment complex, while at the same time that apartment complex was also some type of military node. It was some cache site. They were using mosque hospitals, and we saw all this stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was not. It was not abnormal to see a mosque being used as a weapons cache. It just wasn't. So I don't think those hostages come back alive. I really don't, because at some point, either they're going to get killed in an airstrike or something like that, and then two, they're going to become a logistical problem for Hamas. They are going to become a burden on them. Israel's cut off all electricity, water to Gaza. There's nothing going into Gaza except for Israeli artillery. And stuff. So eventually, I mean, they're not going to be able to feed them. They're not going to be able to take care of them medically, because they're going to run out of medical supplies, and they probably aren't going to be high on that list. When they start triaging folks, those hostages are going to be, they're going to get triaged last. So, I mean, we have move assets into the region that, are chartered to, get those folks back. But I think this administration is going to be very, very gun shy about doing that. Because the last thing they want, as you ramp up to campaign season, is to have some of our special operations forces go into a place like that and get mauled. Right? They don't want to have another Mogadishu 1993 on their hands. Right prior to going to an election. It's not good, and so I don't know. They're there to if conditions present itself, for an opportunity, and yeah. But I don't think that's going to be. I don't think there's going to be many. And I forgot your other question.
Oh, I forget it as well. Well,
Oh,
from what I was reading,
please.
they think there's they say up to 20 unaccounted for as far as
Okay.
Americans. So not necessarily hostages, but 20 that they can't find.
Well, it
Yeah.
kind of go ahead.
No, go ahead, Luke.
It kind of depends on who the hostages are, right? It really does.
Sure.
Because, it could be 20 people from the rave festival, which are worthless to Hamas, basically, unless their parents are rich, unless their parents are very, very wealthy. But then the odds of them surviving and stuff like that, there's a calculus that, get it straight, man. All the savagery you saw on your televisions, it was straight up savagery. And we tend to think, well, these people are just straight animals. And that is animalistic behavior. I'll give it that, which is an insult to animals everywhere. But it is animalistic and brutal, barbaric type behavior. But the leadership and some of the senior ground level leadership are crafty. They're crafty people. We tend to think, oh, these people are just barbarians. They're just dumb. They're not dumb. They're crafty. So if you have a hostage that you think can get you something you want, whether that's money or whatever, they're going to try to use that. Problem is, I just don't know how many of them there are. Like, think about it this way. And this lends to the hostages being dead. Did you see the plane loads of Israelis? I think it was Roger that posted today. It's like, hey, Ukrainian men everywhere. This is how it's done. And it was a plane load of Israeli reservists flying over to Israel to fight. That's ballsy. That's gangster right there. But it could have been Israeli IDF reservists. Those guys are dead. Because there's a lot of U.S. people who are Israeli or are IDF reservists. So it's like, who did they take? And we sure haven't heard anything about all the generals they kidnapped. I mean, my God, those guys are in Lebanon right now or somewhere. Those Israeli generals they kidnapped, they ain't in Gaza anymore. Put it to you that way. There's, I mean, Josh, unless you think differently.
No, I don't disagree with you. They are certainly they are certainly not in Gaza. Those dudes got squirreled away into the western reaches of Jordan, or across a border somewhere. Yeah, they're not in Gaza.
I want to bounce something right back to you. I want to bounce something right back to you after I talk for a second, because I know you want to talk about this, because this has got Josh written all over it. If you follow Josh on Twitter, and if you've been listening to the podcast at all, one thing I'd like to talk about real quick is proportionality in war. Right? You're hearing a lot of calls right now for let's keep this proportional. I loved Hamas comes out and there was talk, and a lot of the people, especially on the left, were saying we need to talk ceasefire right now. We need to talk about truce right now. And it's like, what? Before we even get a chance to hit back? No. It's like getting punched square in the face, and the dude that just punched you was talking all that yang. It was like, okay, bro, it's all cool now. No, it's not cool. I know we're talking about stuff on an international level, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and there are a lot of playground rules involved in war, right? You give someone some lumps, you expect to get some back. So proportionality in war, right? And this is what I kind of want to talk to Josh about. I like what Roger said about, and I've held this feeling for a long time. People say, well, what did we get out of, what we did after 9/11? That was not a proportional response. What we did was not a proportional response. Like textbook. We got roughly 3,000 civilian killed. And what did we do? We went in and cleaned out 2 countries is what we did. 2 whole countries. And we probably could have done more. We probably could have done 3. And what that showed history, what that showed the world, is that you don't mess with us. If you mess with us, we may lose after 20 years, but a lot of your people are going to feel it. They're going to feel it. That's your warning. For some of these crazy, Islamic fundamentalists, it's worth it to them. I get it. There's proportional response. Civis Romanus sum, right? You kill one citizen of Rome, your whole, throughout the empire, wherever, your village is going to be razed. That is not a proportional response. You're going to bomb Pearl Harbor? A proportional response would be to go bomb one of their naval installations. But no, we didn't do that. We went ahead and went into a world war on 2 fronts in the Pacific and European theater. So you look at Israel right now, what's the proportional response? The proportional response is to, I don't know, maybe limited incursion into Gaza, maybe DMZ, whatever. But no, they're going to do a disproportionate response, and they're going to do what Josh said earlier, and we're going to wipe out all of Hamas. That's how we're going at this. Will they succeed in that? Probably not, but they're going to kill a lot of people, and a lot of shit's going to get flattened. So, Josh, I want you to have a bit of catharsis here and just get it out. What do you think should happen in Gaza? Like, if you were the SecDef for the Israeli Defense Forces and Mossad and everybody, like, how would you approach the situation?
It's tough, right? Because like we were talking about just a few minutes ago, there are people in Gaza who are innocent of this. There are people in Gaza who had nothing to do with this. There are people in Gaza that they wake up every day and just try and figure out how they're gonna survive and how they're gonna keep their kids alive. So I would never support the indiscriminate mass murder of civilians. Just without. Now you tie that to what happened, and we were supposed to have this conversation a podcast or 2 ago when we were talking about Oppenheimer, right? And should we or should we not have not dropped the bombs? And
should have dropped one more,
right? Yeah. So yeah, this question you should have asked Roger this question. I don't, again, like, just mass murder and a bunch of civilians is, not, I don't necessarily think we do that. And it's not because I don't realize that most of the people in Gaza would gladly cheer to see my family killed, or they would actually participate in, in our killing. But, at the end of the day, not all human life is generally, is generally precious. So it's, I wish the kids in Gaza who have been indoctrinated by their parents, by that, by that leadership. Yeah, I wish they could find a way to get out. I wish they could find a way to, escape and get deprogrammed. because this isn't going to end. I there's going to be a high price to pay. What should happen in Gaza? What I think should happen in Gaza? I think Israel should end bloodlines. I think that Israel should go in there and ensure that this never happens again. And if Israel has to spend 20 years in Gaza, like we spent in Afghanistan, to ensure that, then fine. Because at the end of the day, if Hamas had attacked an IDF base and killed some Israeli soldiers, hey, you know what? That's war. All right, soldiers kill each other. You know what you signed up for, and that happens. But when you go in and you start killing innocent civilians and you start killing babies and you start decapitating babies, there is no let's sit down at the table and talk. There's no reasoning with that. There is nothing that you're going to tell that person that is going to change their mind about you. And I mean, Hamas was formed back what? The late 80s? It was like 87, like 88, 87, 88, somewhere in there, right? And they were originally formed to, kind of counter a little bit Palestinian Islamic Jihad, to kind of balance out. Um, but Hamas came out and stated, shortly after they were formed, hey, their purpose is to destroy Israel and to drive the Jewish people into the sea and kill them all. So you really, there's no living with that. There's no living next door to that. Some people will be like, well, you just, you go to your air shelter when, they send rockets, and the other side goes to theirs when they send rockets. All right. Well, you can't live like that. And you can't live next to a people who, it's not that, it's like the Hatfields and McCoys, and there's like, oh, well, we kind of don't like them. It's like, no, like, I mean, they are born and they are raised and indoctrinated from birth to, you have to go kill Jewish people. You have to go kill the Israelis. Right? It's the same thing, and we all saw it in the Balkans. And I knew, and I was, it was my first deployment, man. I was a private. Like, I was going to save the world. I was going to save these people. I was going to save the Kosovo Albanians from, the evil Serbians who, came through and killed them and dropped them in wells. Until I had this little Albanian boy come up to me, and we were sitting at a cafe having chai, talking to a dude, and he goes, "I want to kill Serbs." And this kid's probably 6 or 7 years old, and of course, you were doing this through an interpreter. It's like, why? He goes, because that's what my parents told me I need to do. And right then, my view of the world as a young, as a very as a very young man, my view of the world was shattered. And I was just like, you will never fix this. You will never solve this problem because you have this 6, 7-year-old kid. Like, I want to kill somebody of a different nationality. Why? Well, because my parents told me that's what I need to do. And so it's the same, it will. And then, now Serbia and Kosovo are, about to have another Donnybrook. They're back in the news again. And here we are. And that was when, what? That was like 1999, 2000. Here we are 23 years later, and they're still killing each other. So what does what does Israel need to do? Again, I think they need to go into Gaza and they need to end bloodlines, because you can't reason with them. Israel has tried. They're, both sides have done dirty stuff. Both sides have, not necessarily, played by the rules. Israel's not, Israel's certainly not perfect, but at the end of the day, Israel hadn't gone in and decapitated a bunch of kids. That's just, to me, that's you've crossed a Rubicon at that point. And at this point, I think the U.S. needs to stay out of the way. They need to give Israel, hey man, give Israel the munitions that they need, and just stay out of the way and let the Israelis do what they're going to do. I think that's the best thing that we can do.
How many peace deals has Israel been willing to give the Palestinians over the past 50 years? Dozens. How many have the Palestinians taken? Zero. They've taken none of those peace deals. And in my lifetime, and I want to, Roger needs to talk too, but in my lifetime, I've watched the map of Israel change because of Israeli concessions. They've changed. Israel no longer controls half of Jerusalem. They have given so many concessions and the Palestinians will not take it. And that's a testament to their leadership, not the average Palestinian on the ground. Although I did text or message Josh, and I was like, what you said about the civilians there on the ground, who they're just trying to make their way, and he's going to his tea shop every morning. He just wants to live. That dude is a dead to rights supporter of Hamas because of the cycle, right? And I'm not saying the cycle of violence. I'm not going that way with it. I'm gonna kick it to you, Roger. I just had to say how Israel has bent over backwards for them. But it's a testament to how important it is to realize what your government is doing, how your government is representing you, right? A lot of people argued after 9/11, and maybe they had a point. There's a reason this happened, and it was because of our foreign policy. There's no arguing with that. There is no arguing with that. Our foreign policy, if it wasn't what it was, I'm not saying it didn't need to be that, but our foreign policy was what it was, is what it is, and that opened us up for a lot of people wanting to do a 9/11 or worse type of attack. Are you okay with that or not? Hey, Hamas, average Palestinian living in Gaza, you realize your house is going to be flattened because you support this type of leadership. I don't say they get what they deserve. I'm not saying that. I'm not going all Josh on it. They get what you deserve, because you say that a lot, right? These people in these we say that a lot. We say that a lot. These people in these cities get what they deserve. In like San Francisco, Chicago, whatnot. I feel a little bit of that with Hamas and the people there, but at the same time, what did I say earlier? The kids getting hurt. That's what sticks with me the most. So
yeah, and real quick, Roger, I just got one last thing to say. So we said when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the Jewish community, we said after World War II, we said never again, right? We said that. So at some point, never again has to carry some meaning. It was the worst. The attacks on Israel just now, a couple of days ago, were the worst, the most deaths of Jewish people at one time since World War II. So either never again has meaning or it doesn't. I'm not going to pretend that an action, their actions aren't going to result in some serious collateral damage. I mean, there is going to be a heavy price to pay, for Israelis and Palestinians in this. But there's no choice. I hope Israel does what they need to do as swiftly as possible. It's not going to be swift. It's not going to be quick. I think it's going to take time. But I'm not going to entertain those who insist that there's an easy alternative when they really mean, well, just, we peace at, any price. No, you can't have peace at any price with people living right next door to you who are willing to cut off babies' heads. You can't, there is no peace with them. There is absolutely zero peace with them. And so they just need to go in and finish this. And bloodlines, are they going to wipe Hamas off the map? No, they're not. Are they going to kill a lot of them? Yeah. But again, it goes back to that, you're fighting an ideology and you're never going to completely eradicate that. So I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. I mean, you're talking about people that cannot coexist. Right. And especially here in the States, we have this, love, peace and happiness and love your neighbor. And we can all just live in the same neighborhood. And we just, we agree to disagree. Well, you know what? These people aren't agreeing to disagree. It's like you said with, Hamas and these folks and the Palestinians, they want to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. They want to wipe the Jews from the face of the earth. And realistically, the Jews probably want to do it the other way as well, right? But they've just shown a lot more restraint. And as Luke has mentioned, they seem to have come to the table many, many more times to say, okay, hey, let's give peace a chance, or something just short of that. And Luke, you kind of hit this on the head, and I was going to actually ask you this: is how much blame do the people of Gaza assume, or should they assume, for this? So I've done a little bit of gurgling on here, and I'm not an expert on Hamas and how their leadership is, quote unquote, I do air quotes, elected, because some quick reading is that they are kind of sort of elected, but we know how that goes, right? Are they truly elected, or, hey, I was elected? So when you look at, and here's the reason I asked this, because initially my first thing is this: look, man, Hamas was created because, or they have taken the path that they have taken because when, what was it, the Oslo Accords, with the PLO decided to lay down their arms, right? Hey, we're going to come up with this Palestinian Authority. We're going to rule, and we're going to rule peacefully and this and that. And Hamas was like, oh, screw that. That is not our style. That is not how we're doing it. So you're taking this faction that, like you said, it plays a political role, but is also the militant arm, okay, of that government. Whether they are elected or supported or whatever by the people, do the people there bear any responsibility for this? And the reason I ask is because now when you look at, when you look at what Israel's doing right now, it's pretty, hey, air campaign, and then what? Now we start bringing in the tanks and we just start leveling stuff, right? And we go door to door because it's going to be brutal terrain, dude. Josh alluded to that. That terrain is not going to be fun. So there's going to be an air campaign that goes on for a while, and then they're going to put the ground troops on there, and you're essentially going to have to go door to door, and you start leveling things. Especially with the way the Gaza Strip is, a lot of civilians. And not to say that you go through and you just start schwacking everybody that you see, but do you hold the people responsible at all? And if you do hold the people responsible for that, what do you do with them? Right? What do you do with them when you come across them? Because like Josh mentioned, it's not going to be like, hey, we're just going to put you in a little camp here for a couple of weeks, and then once we get done here, we'll let you go, and everything's going to be all hunky dory. When you look at Hamas, they are made up of those folks on the Gaza Strip. The only piece of me that gives me some pause is, and those of us, we were out in the remote areas of Afghanistan, and one thing I saw out there when they were talking about like the Taliban and how the Afghans supported the Taliban and this and that, there was nothing else, right? There was nothing. Some of these areas we went to, I am sure have not seen a Korean dude probably ever, right? So not the kind of white dude or anything else, but it's like, we're not talking about living here in Phoenix. Okay. Oh, I don't like my neighborhood. I can move. I don't like Queen Creek. I just moved to Gilbert or whatever. There is no other way for those folks. A lot of those folks in Afghanistan, especially in those remote and rural areas. Hey man, Taliban rules this area. Guess what? You're a supporter. You don't have any, there's no alternative. My thought with the people, on the Gaza Strip is, is there an alternative? I'm not quite sure there is. And, ultimately, how much do you hold them as being responsible? And then what do you do with them on the battlefield?
It's a tangle. It's a tangle because this goes back, in case y'all didn't know, this is the Reader's Digest version. Josh, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, because I probably am. But my understanding is this goes back about 3,000 years and probably further back than that. You look in the Bible, like just read the story of Abraham, man, it all starts there. And that's not the story of Muslims versus Jews, by the way. Islam didn't come around until way after Christianity. So
it was like the 7th century.
Yeah.
When Islam showed up.
This isn't necessarily like the problems that are going on in Israel right now. Well, it's evolved into a Muslim versus Jew thing, but it has much deeper ties than that, because we've talked on this podcast before about Afghanistan, right? And how deep those tribal roots are over there. It goes family, tribe, and Islam is, down there on the list, ethnicity. And then Islam is like 5th on the list of what their priorities are, where their loyalties lie. So I think the leadership uses Islam because it's a very regimented type religion, and as is Judaism, and they use it as a tool to, stoke that hatred. But, going way back to the biblical times, one thing that's hard for the modern mind to wrap its head around is that borders are a relatively new thing. Like established borders, you do not cross this line. It's a relatively new thing. We as Americans really put a lot of stock in borders. I think most people do now, but you got to realize that what's going on in Israel transcends borders, because the Palestinians and Jews, you remember the Old Testament, talk about the Philistines, right?
The Philistines,
Joshua. Philistines are Palestinians. That's what's going on here. When Joshua, back in the day, they went into the homeland, they've been wandering in the desert. They're trying to find their homeland. Joshua went in and they took, Goliath was a Philistine, that David fought. Oh boy. Oh, Roger, just you got 4 minutes. Let me finish my Reader's Digest, and then we'll live stream this. We'll do it live, just like Bill O'Reilly. So point is, it goes all the way back to then, right? The Jewish people have lived there forever. So have the Palestinians, and it's just been a fight over who owns it since biblical times. Read the Bible, pick up the Old Testament. It was going on back then, and man, boy, it was brutal back then too. Man, they were bringing down whole cities like Jericho. Salt in the earth. I mean, it was brutal. So this goes all the way up. You know, I don't know if y'all, obviously guys think about the Roman Empire all the time. Maybe people have heard of the Masada. I mean, back then there were Jewish separatists who didn't like Roman rule. They were trying to kick the Romans out of
Yeah.
there, and the Romans took that very seriously. So,
Yeah.
and then you fast forward, Ottoman Empire owned it for a while. The Jews and the Jews and the Palestinians were still fighting it out, and the Jews were always fighting it out with, because the Palestinians have always seemed to adopt whatever authority was in there at the time, except for the Romans, maybe. As long as it was Muslim, Palestinians would be okay with it. But a lot of Palestinians were expelled from the area as well, not by the Jews, but by the Ottoman Empire. The Palestinians and the Jews have always been kind of wily people there. So anyway, you fast forward through the Ottoman Empire, and then the British end up owning it in the 40s. Then you had World War II. And in 1947, the British found themselves in a really sticky situation where they didn't want to get between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And since the Holocaust had just happened and everybody was putting a lot of pressure on the British, they just kind of handed it over to the Jews. Now, it's not as simple as that, but the Palestinians and the Jews fought it out for a whole year. Two paramilitaries just going after it. And the Jews came out on top. They established a state, and here we are. But those roots go back, those borderless roots go back thousands of years. And it ain't, one of the things, Josh, because I'm going to forget this, I want you to, because I know you got a lot to say, but I posted something on the C3 Twitter. This is one of the most gangster things I've ever seen. It was badass. It was a video of some IDF, Israeli Defense Forces soldiers in a helicopter about to go do an air assault somewhere, and they were doing their chant in Arabic. They were Muslim Bedouins ready to go to war for the IDF. Okay, so 20% of the population of Israel proper, this doesn't include Palestinian territories, is Arabic, is Arab. I mean, Arab Muslim. They hold seats on the Supreme Court. They hold seats within the Knesset. This is not an apartheid state, people. It's not. You want to know what is an apartheid state? Gaza. Because there ain't no Jews in Gaza. Okay?
Nope.
All I'm saying is that was freaking, I love that unity. It's like, you see, I mean, these Muslims are ready to go get their kill on. They're chanting, Muslim Bedouins, they're badass. I just thought that was so cool, man. I thought it was the coolest thing I've seen.
No, it was very cool, and that's a great point. You talk about who all's been through there. I mean, they even had to deal with the Assyrians, at one point. So Assyrian Christians came in there, and I mean, they rousted them and conquered them for a while, dude. I mean, they fought like you said, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Turks. I mean, there's Crusaders, the Egyptians, and dude, everybody and their grandmother has been through there and conquered it and fighting it, at one point or another. It was cool. So I got to go to Lebanon a couple times, and just to be there with the history is very cool. Not, I mean, especially when you start talking about, being able to go to places that are mentioned in the Bible, I think is absolutely fascinating. And and Israel's on my bucket list. Like I want to go to Israel. I love to go to Jerusalem. And some of the historic biblical sites. But I got to go see an old Crusader castle up in just north of Beirut in a place called Byblos. And the castle's still there, the Roman pillars and everything, the columns are still there, and you got to walk around, go inside the castle. So it was pretty cool. So yeah, it drives me nuts when people are like, well, when Israel took this land in 1947, and you're like, man, yeah, no, I think the history goes back a little further than that. Like you said, you got to jump in the Wayback Machine, and we're talking, I mean, we're talking before Christ, right? We're talking long before the Common Era. But nobody wants to talk about that. They all want to talk about 1917 or 1947. So I don't know, again, I don't know how this is going to play out. Um, but I think I think we're in for the long haul on this, because the Israelis have a memory, and if anything, they're patient. Because you got the leader of Hamas doesn't even live in Gaza. He's been living in exile in or is it Qatar, for, I mean, since what? I mean, it's like 2013, 2020, or somewhere in there. He's been there for a hot minute, and because even the Syrians kicked him out. The Syrians were like, "No, you can't," because he was there for a while, and even the Syrians were like, "Man, we don't want those problems here." And it's bad when Assad, doesn't want you, um,
Hey,
hanging out.
tell him real quick, Josh, about how Arabs feel about Palestinians.
Arabs absolutely hate Palestinians. It's a lot of people don't understand that. I had somebody, and I really try not to, especially because I was busy today, man, because my boss is, that guy's relentless. He's a taskmaster. He makes me do all the things that he doesn't want to do. Um, so, you know, I got sucked into, talking to somebody on Twitter, about this, because it's like Ron White says, I have the right to remain silent, but I don't have the ability. When I see people post things that are just inherently wrong, yeah, I mean, just like inherently wrong, I have to, I feel the need to correct them. And generally I correct them, especially, I just call them stupid, or tell them to go read a history book and delete their account. Um, this girl tried to break down that Palestinians are Arabs, and was like, yeah, no. And then she also tried to break down that Iranians supported the Palestinians because Iranians are Arabs too. And I was like, yeah, no, no, they're not. Nope, no, they're not. And but she doubled, instead of going, oh, you know what, I misspoke. Like, she doubled down that Iranians are Arabs. I was like, Iranians are Persians, and she's like, well, that's the same thing. And I was like, you're an idiot, but you're just like, there's no, you know, it was, it drives me nuts. But yes, Arabs hate Palestine. They hate the Palestinians, and that's why those Arab Bedouins that you talked about. That's why they're going to go fight them, because they don't like them either. They got no qualms of killing Palestinians. And Palestinians, right? I mean, turn around, they hate Arabs too. The only common connection that they have is their religion, is Islam. That's it. For the ones, the Arabs that are Muslim, which is, I mean, is predominant religion. But yeah, I mean,
So and throw something right back at you, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot today, and I've actually been hearing a lot of it. Is all the moral equivalence going on, and all the excuse making and the proportionality that we talked about earlier. We have a problem in the West, and I've been hitting on it on and off since we've been talking. Is that we have a certain mindset, and we believe, it's that whole ego thing, right? We believe everyone's like us. Everyone's reasonable just like us. We don't understand. It's like after 9/11, right? I even said it myself, because our foreign policy. We tried to get in the mind of the enemy. It's like, what would make them do this? Obviously, they've been pushed to the limit, and we've done something that would make them do this, right? But what's going on right now is a different sort of moral equivalence that I can't quite wrap my head around, because, Josh, for the life of me, I can't imagine what would drive me to the point of executing children, let alone decapitating them. There's, I mean, you could force yourself into a place like back in the Viking, raiders and stuff like that, when they were taking the mushrooms and, getting all hyped up before battle, where they went in berserker mode and they just did some crazy stuff. But that's not realistic. I still don't see myself ever getting to a place where I've been so wronged that I would indiscriminately kill children. So can you, like, I don't even know the question I'm trying to ask. It's like, what's with the moral equivalence? It's like, I saw one story today where or not stories, like Twitter threads of journalists saying, well, not all 40 children were decapitated.
Oh yeah,
It was
that
only
was
like
wow.
7. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know where you're going with that. I mean, what's going on with this? And why are so many people so quick to? You saw Rashida Tlaib wouldn't even respond to the journalist saying, "Hey,
Good question.
what's going on with this? Why are so many, specifically Americans, invested so deeply in this?"
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of Americans, whether they be, just because of their social circles or whether, by their political choice or, you know, in academia, pick your university, have been brainwashed to hate Israel. Right. I mean, they have been brainwashed, right? Israel's this great Zionist, state, and everything that's wrong with the world is because of them. But because they worship people like, George Soros. You say something bad about George Soros, be like, George Soros is a terrible person and he's providing, he's funding these liberal DAs that are, ignoring, criminals and not prosecuting criminals, stuff like that. And people are like, well, you're anti Semitic. You're like, wait, what? Like, I criticize his actions. I didn't criticize his religion, right? I didn't criticize him for being Jewish. And so they have been on that hand, you know, they, they've been taught to love it, but on the other hand, they have been indoctrinated to hate Israel, and anything Israel does, anything Israel comes out and says is bad as a government, right? Because again, they only get, and the media is also complicit in this as well, because you take a look at some of these headlines. ABC put out a headline, and they almost said unprovoked attack into Gaza, Israel's unprovoked incursion into Gaza, and you're like, are you serious? Like, are you crazy? Like, are you absolutely insane? Um, that was so. I think a lot of it has to do with that, and I think a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand the history of Israel, like we just talked about. They don't understand the history of Hamas. They don't understand. I guarantee you, 98% of the people in the United States could not have told you where the Gaza Strip was in Israel up until 2 days ago. And I would go out on a limb and say that probably 85% still can't tell you because nobody's posted on Twitter. You really want to blow their mind? Have them point out the Golan Heights or the West Bank. Again, somebody else today tried to tell me, well, the West Bank is on the coast because that's the West Bank. Like, nope, try it again. It's like Jerusalem, not on the coast. And they're like, well, the West Bank is in the West. And I was like, oh, Jesus. Okay. So the moral equivalency thing, and people want so badly. You saw the BLM tweet come out of the of the Hamas basically paratrooper, you know, descending under canopy with the Palestinian flag on top of it, and BLM's like, yeah, we stand with them fighting against our apartheid and stuff like that. You're like, you well, one, okay. I mean, you already said you were a Marxist organization, so I mean, it's you already showed your true colors. But they put that out. Everybody was like, "Ooh!" Even David Weissman. All right, and David Weissman's a pretty hard left guy. He's he's a pundit, got a very large following. Even he has come out and said maybe the Republicans were right about Black Lives Matter as a group. Maybe they aren't the people we should be backing. And it's like, man, you ever seen somebody red pill so quick? you know but you have a lot of these folks that trying to do the moral equivalency, and you're like, well, they didn't necessarily decapitate all the babies, and you're like, holy cow. Harvard came out, you saw you saw the rallies all across the United States, which is, people really need to pay attention to this. You saw it in New York and DC, other major cities. You saw Dearborn, Michigan, who damn near every translator I've ever worked with, has come out of Dearborn, Michigan. unless they were Somali and they came out of Minneapolis. You know, there's a very large military age male population in the United States who is very, very supportive of Hamas and what's going on in Gaza right now and in Israel. But where does that moral equivalency come from? I think it comes from a lot of different places. The ones I just kind of laid out, which is it's sickening, honestly. I mean, I think that's one thing that you would think that's one thing that everybody could get behind. Again, you want to attack a military target, a legitimate military target, go attack a legitimate military target. And that's, it's like, okay, we can have that conversation. But once you start decapitating and killing little kids, that should be a deal breaker for everybody. But unfortunately, you're also talking about, a political party who, pushing for abortion up to the moment of birth. So I mean, they really, killing babies is not across the Rubicon for them. So I don't, Roger, you got any thoughts on where is this moral equivalency coming from and why?
Well, yeah, they got backed into a corner because they were trying to compare it to Ukraine and Russia, right? Like, whoa!
Right,
Now the conservatives, you don't want to support Ukraine. You don't want to support Ukraine, but you'll turn right back around and support Israel. Well, it's kind of like you were saying with BLM. It's like one's a terrorist group, right? Hamas. So it's like, generally speaking, we tend not to support terrorist organizations. And then once they ramped it up to killing the babies, that's where that we just got to downplay it a little bit because we still got to try to make that. And that narrative died fast. I mean, it died quick. I think I heard the Ukraine comparison, like the first 12, 14 hours. And then once the baby killing started coming out, that quickly dropped. And now you just have the extremes that are still stuck on it because, well, if you want to send, money to Israel, well, we also need to send money to Ukraine. Let's just send money to both of them, right? And that's just how they are. But again, you're talking about people, like you said, you're talking about people that support abortion up to birth. You're talking about people that hate this country the way it is. You're talking about Marxists. You're talking about socialists. You're talking about communists. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything, less from them. Here's my thing: it's like, hey, man, if you support them so much, buy a plane ticket, go support the cause, right? I mean, same thing with Ukraine. Hey, man, go support the cause. Go be a freedom fighter. Put your money where your mouth is. But they try to draw that line. They try to draw that comparison. And the fact is, like, hey, man, they're a terrorist organization. I think I was just pulling up that even the Swiss government, they're looking at, considering Hamas as a terrorist or labeling them as a terrorist organization. Because you hit it on the head. Hey, you want to go hit a military target? I don't agree with it. The conflict, it just keeps it going. But I get it, right? That's what militaries do. You hit other military targets. But to strictly, target civilians like this, and I think they expect a bigger backlash from Israel. Luke asked early on, I think he put it in a text on, why now? And a lot of the rhetoric out there that I've been reading is that, well, you know what? Because the Gaza Strip and Hamas have kind of, Palestinians have kind of fallen out of the news lately, right? I mean, think about it. When was the last time you heard any news out of the Palestinians, right, or Hamas as a whole, the Gaza Strip as a whole? So the intent, from what I'm gathering, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, is that you haven't really heard from them or about them in a while, and supposedly this attack was practiced like for a long time in broad daylight. And everything that you read on the open source was that Israel just kind of took it as they're posturing, but this was Hamas's way of getting the understanding they're going to do something this devastating, that Israel is probably, I think they're expecting Israel to hit back 10 times harder, right? Because then you can take it to the UN. Now you can bring it up on the world stage. And it goes back to that cyclical piece that we were talking about before. Hamas kills a few people. Obviously, this was a lot more, but generally speaking, Hamas kills a few people. Israel comes in and they kill 1,000. And then now Israel's the bad guys. With this here, I mean, you can imagine the response that's going to happen, over the next, dude, it's going to be longer than weeks, right? Months. unless somebody intervenes. You can imagine the Israeli response and how many lives are going to be lost, how many people are going to kill. And this is their way of bringing it back in the news. Hey, you got to bring it back to us, and we need our own state, and what have you. Luke, I'll kick it to you. You just threw up now we should talk about the intelligence failure. So, there is a large following that believes that this is much like Pearl Harbor, right? Where Pearl Harbor, and it escapes my mind, but with the encryption machine, where we knew what was going to happen, right? We knew an attack was going to happen, and we couldn't take action to show that we knew, because then they would know, the Germans would know that we broke the code, right? So there was a lot of speculation, and I don't even know if it's speculation, maybe it's just straight rumor, that the Israelis kind of already knew this was going to happen, something to this extent, and let it happen to give them a reason to go try to wipe Hamas, in the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth.
The simplest explanation is always probably the right one. It's probably the one you should probably put money on, right? And the three of us have always talked about, in professional and personal settings, how good the Israeli intelligence really is. It's one of the best in the world. So how does something like this happen, right? And Roger, that's a good point. You're talking about the Enigma machine and all that stuff, and Pearl Harbor.
There you go.
And, the simplest explanation to me is they knew something was coming, but not to this scale, right? They probably thought, well, they're going to fire some more rockets. A couple of them will get through the Iron Dome, and it'll just be business as usual. Hamas, stirring up trouble and killing, 5 to 10 Israelis. Maybe there'll be a couple checkpoint, bursts where the Palestinians jump out of the car, kill a few IDF soldiers. But it was just way bigger than that. And there was a failure at some point. I don't know. I try not to get conspiratorial about it, because I really don't know what Israel has to really gain from this. I don't think they gain a whole lot. Like if they just planted a nuke in Gaza, if they could do that and contain it and just everyone's dead, I don't think that does them any favors. Maybe, I don't know. I don't go towards.
Well, I don't think anybody knew the scale of this,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody thought that this scale would
or
happen.
The intel wasn't adding up, right? The analysts just weren't. It's like, this doesn't add up. Maybe this is white noise out there. About hang gliders coming in. That sounds like red mercury, man. That sounds like red mercury and pin guns. Well, Hamas is going to use hang glider, motorized hang gliders to come in there, the paragliders or whatever it is. That sound to me, as an intel professional, I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't. I think that's BS, right? So you might dismiss everything. Every source of intelligence is coming from that particular source or method. It's like, well, they're the ones that reported this hang glider stuff, and we think that's BS because it's ridiculous. So let's just discount everything else. I don't know. I think it's an intelligence failure, but I don't think it's because of incompetence. I just think that's the way intelligence works, and sometimes this stuff happens. Yeah, I don't know, Josh. What do you think?
So I got some thoughts on the why now. Right, Israel. We all know about the Abraham Accords, all right, that were brokered during the Trump administration. Right, I mean, I never thought I would see that happen in my lifetime. I honestly didn't, and when that happened, I mean, that I would, I was a little bit, as my kids would say, shook. In a good way, like, wow, like, holy cow, like, we actually accomplished something. And it wasn't because Trump administration, and I'll give Trump his due, because for decades and decades and decades, Kissinger and everybody is like, we need to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to sit down at the table. It's like, okay, you're never gonna make that happen, and it's not gonna last. What you do is you start isolating Hamas, you start isolating the Palestinians by making deals with the neighbors. All right. So, I mean, they were on the verge of a lasting peace with a lot of the major Arab countries. Saudi, I mean, dude, I mean, they were on verge of a lasting peace with Saudi. I mean, that's huge. And, China came in, they brokered the talks between Saudi and Iran. Like, there was real progress, for the most part, at least with the major countries being made outside of Iran.
Iranians
But I
are
mean, there was some.
Arabs.
Oh Lord, dude! When she said, I was just like, oh Jesus Christ. So you look at that. So I think that had something to do with it. All right. And then you turn around and you take a look at, one of y'all, I forget who it was, brought up the Oslo peace talks. Dude, Hamas scuttled those things back in, was it the 90s? With the Oslo peace talks, like mid 90s or somewhere? Dude, they scuttled those things with a whole bunch of attacks on Israel. And so everybody was like, all right, well, the peace talks are off. It's done. So I think that's a big reason why, because all the major strides, not just with the Abraham Accords, but also, as bad as I hate to give them credit, the China deal between, Saudi and Iran. That's huge. All right. And, if anybody knows that, about the, Saudi's relationship with Iran, I'd have to go back and find that account and be like, so you do know the difference between Sunni and Shia Islam, right? Um, but I think that's a big thing.
So I'm
Big
gonna
reason why.
I'm gonna inject a couple of things and kick it to you, because I just want to talk about a couple of things. Back to the Arab versus Persian thing. Saudi versus Saudi Arabia, basically Saudi and all those countries right there versus Iran. There's always been a butting of heads right there. Always. That's why the China thing, Josh, was so huge, I guess. I don't know where that stands now, because you talk about two types of people that have hated each other for longer than Jews have hated Palestinians and vice versa. Like, that dates prehistory. The Persians and the Arabs. I mean, that is big time hatred that goes back a long way. So I want to kick this back to you, because do you think in any way, because obviously, we just gave $6 billion to Iran, right? We just gave $6 billion to them, and they can deny it all they want, but some of that, maybe that money was used for humanitarian purposes, and the money that was supposed to be used for humanitarian purposes went to fund this campaign, most likely, right? So Hamas didn't do this without Iran's blessing. That's just all there is to it.
No.
So I guess what I'm asking you is, not asking you, but what are your thoughts on what does Iran stand to gain from this? Are they standing to gain something from, because I always go back to the nuclear thing with Iran, and I know we don't have much time left, but what does Iran stand to gain from this in particular? Is it uniting all the Arab countries, against Israel and into the arms of Iran? I don't know, man.
No, I don't think. I don't think the Arab countries are just going to go fall into the arms of Iran over this. I think what Iran stands to gain is, we broke off the the JCPOA, with them. I think this buys Iran time to work on their nuclear program while Israel is distracted. Because there for a long time, Israel was, Israel was, killing scientists left and right inside Iran, that were working on their nuclear program. Well, now Israel's busy, and they're not, they're not going to be able to necessarily, do that, just because they probably don't have the capacity to, to plan those ops and do those things when they're actively, conducting a ground invasion into, the Gaza Strip. And everything that's going to entail. So I think that's what Iran has to gain by that. And one note, I didn't get a chance to comment on the intelligence failure. I think I agree with you. The most common sense answer is generally the right one. We even had the intelligence, about 9/11, but it was just sitting it was sitting on a server somewhere, and we didn't find it until weeks later. When some nerd pulls that cut and was like, "Oh, hey, yeah, this might have been imported, 4 weeks ago." So again, they saw that and they probably looked at it and they're like, "Yeah, they're not going to do anything. They're not that, you know, they're no way they're going to do what they did." So I agree with that. But yeah, I think that's what Iran stands to gain, and Iran stands to gain the instability, right? Because Iran cannot have, Iran can't have things stable, in Israel with the Palestinians, or Israel with any other countries in the Middle East. Again, to go back to the Abraham Accords, they cannot have that, and still be able to wield their, the influence, especially now with their influence in Iraq. post Saddam. If only we had somebody in Iraq, some type of dictator that could keep Iraq in control and keep the keep Iranian influence out of it. If only we had somebody who could do that.
Mistakes of youth,
but
right?
I digress.
Mistakes of youth.
The mistakes of our youth. Yeah.
Roger, you have a pursed look about your face. Like, is everything okay? Are you doing all right?
So this stuff does not taste good. This stuff does not.
No.
It is like
it's terrible.
It's liquid pledge with like a little bit of sweetener to it, man.
Yeah, you got the lemon.
Horrible.
You got the lemon,
dude. It's horrible.
It's like lemon chalk, is what it is.
Yeah, man. Real quick on the Intel thing, and I just pulled this up, and this is interesting. So not only do you say Israel missed it, not only do you say the U.S. missed it, but they're also saying, friendly Arab states such as Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. So all of those countries missed it. Didn't see this thing coming.
Well, think about it this way. We talked about it. The Biden administration, when they came in, they changed stuff. The Abraham Accords was a success. And it's like, well, we got to minimize that, right? So it's like, I guarantee you the intel sharing, I'm not going to say it dried up, but it was definitely more moderated. And Josh agreed with me on that. It's definitely more moderated.
Yeah,
and we have very robust intelligence sharing with, believe it or not, Jordan, Egypt, all those countries that Roger just mentioned. And these douchebag, whatever. I'm not going to go down that road, but I guarantee you it was passed on to them. Hey, we're going to back off this a little bit. So maybe we did know something was going to happen. Maybe not. I don't know. And maybe it just wasn't shared.
Yeah. That goes back to, trying to go with the never attribute to malice. But because either one of two things, either the United States intelligence community, either A, they completely missed it, which means they're incompetent, or B, they picked it up, but we're not going to share this with them. Right. So it's one of the two things. And I'm going with the incompetence piece on this simply because, this is the same government. We're talking about the same IC and the same government that said, man, we had no idea the Taliban were going to take over. That was
Good
news
Lord.
to us.
And it's like we said,
right? And you're like,
it's like we said today, dude. How many failures have there been? I mean, how many embassies is this now? It's like, cause it's four. I think it's four.
Four.
It's like in 3 years, 4 embassies evacuated. The level of incompetence is breathtaking. And like I was asking Josh earlier, it's like, I know there's a difference. Maybe there's not a difference. Let's be honest. Let's not go down that road. How many Marines and how many service members were lost during that one attack and the evacuation of Kabul? 19. I don't know how many it was, but 22 Americans dead.
13.
13 versus
13.
22, and we don't even have the final count yet. It's like this administration. We called it. Y'all that been listening to us, like, yep, you guys said it, and we agreed with you, and you're right, and we're right too. We called this from the beginning when we started naming the staff picks. This is breathtakingly incompetent.
Yeah. Well, you saw I think it was Blinken or his assistant, the deputy secretary of state, 2 weeks ago said the Middle East has been quieter than it's been in the last 20 years.
Oh, my Lanta.
And you're like, yeah, how'd that work out for you, buddy? But yeah, we called it. When we broke down Biden's cabinet, it was, this is going to end terribly. And
we need to go back to
4
that.
embassies later.
We need to go back and dissect that episode. We should do this over the next week or so. Go back and pull out the tidbits that we, what we predicted, because I bet a lot of that stuff has come true. And and like Josh, you hit on that. It actually pissed me off because I forgot about it until you brought it up. But with the Taliban taking over in Afghanistan, I mean, you remember like daily seeing the map on the news, how it was shifting.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, we could have told you this was going to happen, right? All three of us and 90% of our listeners could have told you this was going to happen. So maybe you are right. Maybe it's just straight incompetence.
You know who's. I
mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, who's sweating worse than Roger right now? Zelensky, because we haven't mentioned we haven't mentioned Ukraine once during this. Now we did mention the Abraham Accords, and maybe somebody let Trump slip through their gullet, but I don't remember anybody saying Trump. We haven't mentioned Trump, and we haven't mentioned Zelensky or Ukraine or Russia. during this whole podcast. It's very interesting, right?
You see, Zelensky is trying to get over to have a meeting with Benny. You know why? Because he doesn't want to be forgotten.
Need that photo op, baby.
Need that photo op. Let him know. Be like, hey man, I still need you guys to cut me a check. U.S. taxpayers, hey man, that bill's due. I need some of your money.
Well, now all of a
So
sudden,
real quick,
now all of a sudden Russian soldiers don't look so bad compared to Hamas, right? I mean, I don't mean anything by that. I'm just saying from a media standpoint, who are the real bad guys now?
well, and that's what we were talking about. I think you may have stepped out of the room
Yeah,
when he was talking about the Chicago BLM and
The
it
moral
was
equivalency stuff.
moral equivalency, where the left was trying to compare it to Ukraine, Russia, right, for funding. Well, hey, we throw money at Ukraine, throw money at Israel, everybody's happy. And it's like, nah. Once the babies, the death and the killing of the babies came out, that quickly, for 99% of the population, that quickly went away. But real quick, I want to go around the horn, change the subject for a last thought on this thing. We can dive into a little bit later as more and more info comes out. But RFK declaring as an independent. Josh, what's your early take on who that helps? Does it help anybody? What do you think happens?
I think he pulls votes from Trump and Biden, but he doesn't win. No independent's going to win in this country for a very long time unless they are just a dark horse candidate that it's going to come out and take it by storm. That is, he
Do you
pulls
think
votes. And that's it.
does he pull more votes from Biden or Trump?
I think he pulled probably about the same from each.
I think just based on Trump's reaction to it, the Trump campaign thinks he's going to pull more votes from Trump than Biden, just based on their reaction to it. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's definitely what they think because man, they went on the offensive, and it's I don't know. I think it's a nice twist, and I like it. Yeah, I'm all Rush Limbaugh right now. Operation Chaos with Hillary Clinton. It's like I'm thinking about actually donating $10 or something to the Kennedy campaign so he can inject a little chaos into the situation because I think that within the next week or two, and I know this doesn't seem like a lot to some people, but the audience is so huge. If Joe Rogan starts talking about this, you're going to see the needle move. You're going to see the needle move. And, I have no idea with Joe Rogan whether there's more Trump or Democrats, whatever, but you're going to see the needle move. And you know what? It might actually hurt Trump more. It might.
Yeah, I think so as far as the votes, I mean, he'll obviously pull some Trump voters and he'll pull some independents, he'll pull some Biden voters. I do think he pulls more Biden voters than Trump voters. And it doesn't have to be a large amount. I mean, if he pulls 1-2% from Biden, and again, this is rainbows and unicorns here, but you're looking at a vastly different electoral map, right? When you look at 1-2% in Georgia, 1-2% in Pennsylvania, 1-2% in Arizona, Nevada. I mean, there's a lot of states there that sway if things stayed the exact same. What I think Trump got fired up because Trump Biden, dude, I got to see that debate because Biden's just a bumbling idiot. He was a bumbling idiot before. It's only going to be worse, right? In a couple years. However, I mean, we all heard, RFK on the Joe Rogan show. That dude's put together upstairs. You may not agree with everything he says, and there's a lot that I don't agree with what he says, but he's not dumb. Okay, he's coherent. The dude's got a memory bank like no other, and he's pretty. He's very, very assertive and very concise with the information that he puts out there. Now he can carry on extended dialogue, but that goes against, I think all of the strengths that Trump has, anything that he has over Biden, especially in a debate. You throw a third party in there, and I don't know if he makes it to the debate stage or not. I mean, there's obviously a lot of different requirements for that to happen, but Trump definitely wants Trump Biden, not Trump RFK Biden, because that, they could take a lot more votes from Trump than if it was just him and Biden, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was on those three on a stage. Yeah, RFK, he is the most coherent, articulate person on that stage because Biden's going to be a bumbling idiot. Trump is going to be, the insolent child. and RFK will be the one who can articulate thoughts and monologues. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because if Trump's the nominee, then RFK is not going to win, and we're going to get 4 more years of Biden or Newsom.
Now just think if RFK had a really great, nice sounding voice. I'm telling you, you may laugh at that.
Oh, different ball game.
It would be a different ball game, and that's a shame. That's a real shame. But anyway,
he still wouldn't win. Still wouldn't win.
No, he wouldn't.
But I think I do disagree with Josh on this. I do think he's going to pull a couple more points from Biden. And if you look at the 2020 map, you pull a couple more points in a few of these states, it's a different ball game.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Biden. What the hell did I just say? I'm going to give a shout out. I don't know what the fuck. That was some Freudian stuff, right there. Wow, what's going on in Luke's head? So I'm going to give a shout out real quick. I'm going to kick it back to Josh to close us out. I want to give a shout out to Damon and everybody else, but Damon in particular, because when I saw Damon was verified on Twitter, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. Culper's Canteen Cup is going to get verified. So within the next 30 days, you're going to see a blue check mark next to Culper's Canteen Cup. So thanks, Damon, for really straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, okay, we're going to invest a little money, nonprofit, and get verified. So thanks, Damon, and I'll kick it to Josh to close us out.
I love it. Now we're going to be, what do they say in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But like, bona fide, not bona fide. So, just a real quick shout out to another Damon, Damon B. I'm gonna use your full name. Hey man, thanks for listening. I don't know where you're at these days. If you're still out in California or not, kicking it in Monterey, hanging out, running the beach with the sea lions. So that's gonna do us for another episode. And we really appreciate you guys taking your time listening to us rant. You can find us on all the socials. Get out there, engage with us, and but most importantly, keep those canteen cups full. And I'll let you know what kind of good whiskey I come up with, because the last week of this month I'll be headed out to Kentucky to do a little bit of the Bourbon Trail. So you guys take care, and we will see you on the flip side.